Most people assume that growing your own food means endless chores, daily watering, non-stop weeding, and a garden that needs babysitting every day. That assumption alone stops a lot of people before they ever start. They're busy. Work, family, errands, and a dozen other obligations already eat up every spare hour. And squeezing a garden into that schedule feels unrealistic. But here's the reality. Not all vegetables are created equal. Some crops are tough enough to keep growing even when life gets chaotic. They shrug off skipped watering, survive rookie mistakes, and keep churning out food with almost no babysitting required. The trick isn't becoming a master gardener. It's picking the right plants. Today on Evergreen Root Garden, we're counting down 15 vegetables that basically take care of themselves. These are the crops that give busy people real harvests in exchange for very little effort. Stick around until the end, because the number one pick on this list can keep producing for years from a single planting. Let's dive in. Number 15, green onions. If there's one vegetable built for people with no time to spare, it's green onions. They just refuse to die. Most vegetables ask for careful planting and seed starting, but green onions can be grown straight from kitchen scraps you'd normally toss out. Save the white root ends from a bunch you bought at the store, drop them in a glass of water, and within a few days, you'll see new green shoots forming. It's one of the quickest, most satisfying wins in gardening. But the real value isn't the speed, it's how forgiving they are. Skip a watering and they bounce back. Ignore them for a few days and they keep going. Cut them hard and fresh leaves grow right back. Since they grow upward instead of out, they barely need any space. A single container on a balcony can keep producing for months. They're also a kitchen workhorse. Eggs, soups, salads, stir-fries, baked potatoes, sandwiches. A handful of green onion makes almost anything better. Busy gardeners want plants that pay them back often, and green onions deliver fast. Repeat harvests instead of a long wait. Once you start snipping fresh greens every week, you'll wonder why you didn't grow them sooner. Number 14, bush beans. Some plants punish every little mistake. Bush beans are the opposite, which is exactly why busy gardeners love them. Unlike pole beans, there's no need for trellises or complicated staking. Just plant, water while they get established, and let them go. Soon they're covered in flowers, then pods, then more pods. And before you know it, you're pulling in handful after handful of fresh beans. What makes them stand out is how fast they pay off. Many varieties start producing in roughly 50 to 60 days. Fast enough to keep you motivated, but long enough to give you a real harvest. They're also impressively productive for how little work they ask of you. A modest planting can feed several meals. Since the plants stay compact, they fit perfectly into raised beds, containers, or small backyard plots. Busy gardeners don't need plants that demand constant attention. They need plants that quietly do their job. Bush beans check every box. Dependable, productive, and one of the easiest ways to fill a basket with food you grew yourself. Number 13, Swiss chard. If vegetables had personalities, Swiss chard would be the laid-back friend who never complains. Too hot? Fine. A bit cold? Still fine. Forgot to harvest last week? No problem, it'll wait. That's why experienced gardeners rank it among the most reliable crops you can grow. Where lettuce wilts and struggles once summer heats up, Swiss chard keeps right on producing. The colorful stalks make it pretty enough for a flower bed, but its real strength is output. One planting can keep feeding you for months. Just pull the outer leaves and let the center keep growing. New leaves replace them, then more appear after that, in a cycle that feels almost endless. Busy gardeners appreciate not having to replant every few weeks, and chard lets you rely on the same plants all season. Because you can harvest at any leaf size, you get flexibility too. Pick early for baby greens, or wait for larger leaves to cook with. Either way, the plant keeps delivering. Few vegetables give this much while asking for so little. Number 12, kale. Few vegetables have built a reputation for toughness like kale has. It almost seems to take difficult weather as a personal challenge. Cold sets in. Kale keeps going. A light frost hits. Kale often tastes better for it. The weather turns unpredictable. Kale just adjusts. That's precisely why busy gardeners gravitate toward it. The less a plant complains, the easier your life is, and kale rarely complains. Once it's established, it needs very little upkeep. Pull the outer leaves, leave the center untouched, and new growth keeps appearing all season. That cut and come again habit means one planting can feed you for months. And a lot of gardeners are surprised by just how much kale one plant can produce over time. It also happens to be one of the most nutrient-dense vegetables out there. But its biggest selling point might just be consistency. Busy gardeners don't need a flawless plant. They need a dependable one, and few are more dependable than kale. Number 11. Okra. The hotter it gets, the better okra performs. While most garden crops start to wilt under peak summer heat, okra treats it as an invitation to grow faster, which makes it a great match for busy gardeners, since summer is often when schedules are most packed with vacations and other distractions. Okra doesn't seem to mind being left alone. Once it's established, it handles dry spells impressively well thanks to deep root growth. Miss a watering? Okra barely notices. Hit 90 degrees? Okra speeds up. Its biggest strength, though, is how long it keeps producing. Once harvest begins, plants can keep yielding for weeks or months, and the more you pick, the more pods show up, almost like the plant is rewarding your attention. Pests and disease also tend to bother it less than other crops, keeping maintenance low. For anyone gardening in a hot climate, okra can feel nearly effortless. Plant it, give it sun, harvest regularly, and let it do the rest. Number 10. Malabar spinach. Most people assume all spinach falls apart once summer arrives, and traditional spinach usually does, bolting, turning bitter, and fading fast in the heat. Malabar spinach breaks that pattern entirely. It isn't true spinach at all. It's a vigorous climbing vine that actually thrives in hot, humid weather, which is exactly why busy gardeners love it. While other greens are throwing in the towel, Malabar spinach is just hitting its stride. Once it takes hold, it climbs trellises, fences, and cages quickly with barely any help. The leaves are thick, glossy, and productive, and unlike many vegetables with a short harvest window, this one can keep going for months. Pick the young leaves and tender shoots, and the plant responds by pushing out even more growth. It also tolerates the occasional missed watering and usually recovers fast. Busy gardeners don't need a plant that demands perfection. They need one that works with real life, and Malabar spinach does exactly that. By midsummer, a single plant can turn a small trellis into a wall of edible green, while other gardeners are still replanting what the heat killed off. Number 9. Cherry tomatoes. If you've ever had trouble growing big slicing tomatoes, you're far from alone. Many gardeners find cherry tomatoes much more forgiving, which is why they're a go-to recommendation for beginners and busy growers alike. Cherry tomato plants tend to grow faster, fruit earlier, and keep producing long after the bigger varieties have slowed down. Some plants can put out well over 100 tomatoes in one season, a serious payoff for fairly minimal effort. Once they're established, the main job is just keeping up with the harvest before it piles up, which is a good problem to have. Cherry tomatoes also tend to be more consistent. Larger tomatoes are prone to cracking, disease, and stress from temperature swings, while cherry varieties handle those issues better. A single container on a sunny patio can keep you supplied for months, and every trip outside turns into a chance to grab a handful of sweet, fresh fruit. Since they're perfect for snacking, salads, and cooking, almost nothing goes to waste. Busy gardeners like crops that reward them often, and cherry tomatoes do exactly that. Number 8. Sweet potatoes. Most people grow sweet potatoes for the roots underground, but that's only half the story. What makes them such a smart pick for busy gardeners is how well they handle imperfect conditions. Once established, they tolerate drought impressively well, and their fast-spreading vines blanket the soil, crowding out weeds along the way, which means less work for you. And less work is the whole point here. Through the growing season, the plants just quietly do their thing. No constant pruning, no daily check-ins, just steady growth. Then, months later, they reward you with a harvest that often beats expectations. Even a small planting can yield an impressive number of potatoes. And in many areas, they're one of the easiest calorie-dense crops you can grow. Plus, the leaves are edible too, a bonus a lot of people don't even realize. Busy gardeners don't always have time to fuss over delicate plants. Sweet potatoes don't ask for that. They grow steadily, forgive mistakes, and deliver a serious harvest without adding complications. Number 7. Collard greens. Some vegetables are delicate. Collard greens are anything but. Few crops can match their reputation for toughness. They handle heat fine, and they handle cold just as well, which is why many gardeners consider collards one of the most dependable leafy greens around. Once established, they keep producing big, nutrient-rich leaves for months. Harvesting couldn't be simpler. Strip the lower leaves as you need them and let the center keep growing. New leaves replace the old ones, creating a steady stream of food all season. That kind of reliability is exactly what busy gardeners want. Instead of constantly replanting, you can just focus on harvesting. Collards also bounce back from setbacks that would seriously hurt more fragile crops, tolerating shifting weather and outlasting many other greens. That's why they remain a fixture in so many home gardens. If your schedule doesn't leave room for constant upkeep, collard greens are happy to carry part of a load themselves. Number 6. Zucchini. If there were an award for most generous vegetable, zucchini would win easily. Gardeners joke about locking their car doors during zucchini season so nobody sneaks extra squash inside. And that joke exists for good reason. These plants are wildly productive. One healthy zucchini plant can churn out 20, 30, even 40 fruits in a single season, an incredible yield from just one plant. Despite that output, the upkeep stays surprisingly low. Give it plenty of sun, reasonable watering, and enough room, and it handles the rest. It grows fast, flowers heavily, and starts producing sooner than a lot of gardeners expect. Busy gardeners also appreciate how efficient it is. You don't need a big garden to see results, and even a couple of plants can outproduce what many families can eat fresh. Because the harvest keeps coming steadily, there's always something ready to pick. Where some vegetables make you work hard for every bite, zucchini seems determined to overwhelm you with abundance. And for a busy gardener, that's a great problem to have. Number 5. Rosemary. Technically, rosemary is an herb, not a vegetable, but it earns its spot here because few edible plants are this easy to grow. In fact, a lot of gardeners worry about rosemary more than rosemary worries about anything. Once it's established, this Mediterranean plant practically thrives on being ignored. It loves full sun, tolerates drought, and actually prefers soil that isn't too rich. That's great news for busy people, since it means less watering, less maintenance, and fewer problems overall. Miss a watering? Rosemary won't care. Forget to fertilize? It keeps growing anyway. While a lot of plants constantly demand attention, rosemary just handles itself. And since it's a perennial in many climates, a single planting can keep producing for years. Picture stepping outside whenever you need fresh herbs for roasted vegetables, grilled chicken, soup, or homemade bread. That's the kind of convenience rosemary offers. Busy gardeners need more than productivity. They need reliability. And rosemary might be one of the most reliable edible plants you can grow. Number 4. Mint. If you've ever grown mint, you already know exactly why it made this list. Most gardeners aren't trying to keep mint alive. They're trying to keep it contained. That's because mint is one of the most aggressive, vigorous edible plants you'll ever grow. Give it a pot, a bit of water, and some sun, and it often takes off almost immediately. In fact, most experts recommend growing it in containers specifically to stop it from spreading everywhere. That's exactly the kind of problem busy gardeners want. Instead of wondering if a plant will survive, you're managing how fast it's taking over. You can harvest fresh mint repeatedly all season for tea, desserts, fruit salads, drinks, and sauces. The uses are nearly endless. And because it recovers so quickly after a trim, you'll rarely run out. Another big point in its favor is forgiveness. Skip a watering, and it usually bounces right back. Have a busy week, and it keeps growing regardless. Few edible plants are this determined to succeed, which makes mint ideal for anyone without endless hours to spend outside. Number 3. Garlic chives. Most gardeners know regular chives, but garlic chives deserve a lot more credit. These tough perennials combine the easygoing nature of chives with a mild garlic flavor that works in countless dishes. Once established, they become one of the most dependable crops in the whole garden. They come back year after year with very little input from you, which is a huge win for anyone short on time. Instead of starting fresh from seed each season, you just harvest what naturally returns. They hold up well against heat, cold, and the occasional neglect, and their thin green leaves can be cut again and again throughout the season as new growth keeps coming. It's about as low maintenance as gardening gets. They're versatile too. Sprinkle them over eggs, stir them into soup, toss them in salads, or use them as a garnish for almost any savory dish. Since you only harvest leaf by leaf, the rest of the plant just keeps growing. Busy gardeners love systems that keep running without constant input, and garlic chives are exactly that. Plant once, and they'll keep paying you back for years. Number 2. Egyptian walking onions. This might be the strangest entry on the list, but it's also one of the smartest picks for anyone short on time, because it basically plants itself. Instead of making seeds the normal way, Egyptian walking onions grow small bulb clusters at the top of their stalks. As those clusters get heavier, the stalk bends toward the ground, and eventually the bulbs touch soil, root in, and form brand new plants. It looks almost like the onion is slowly walking across your garden, which is where the name comes from. For busy gardeners, that self-spreading habit is a huge plus. Plant them once, and they often keep multiplying with little to no help from you. They tolerate cold, need minimal care, and give you edible greens and bulbs throughout the season. Few vegetables offer this much for so little effort. And since most people have never even grown them, they tend to become one of the more fascinating plants in the whole garden. Number 1. Asparagus. If any crop embodies low-maintenance gardening, it's this one. Here's why. Most vegetables need replanting every year, but asparagus doesn't. Once it's established, a single asparagus bed can keep producing for 15 to 20 years, sometimes longer, meaning one planting can pay off for decades. It does take patience early on, since the first few years go toward letting the plants build strong root systems. But after that, the work drops off dramatically while the harvests keep coming. Every spring, fresh spears push up through the soil, almost on schedule. Harvest season comes, you collect your asparagus, and the plants grow on naturally until the next year. An incredible return for a one-time investment of effort. Busy gardeners understand something important. The best gardens aren't necessarily the ones that demand the most work. They're the ones built to keep producing with the least effort possible. Asparagus represents that idea better than almost any other crop out there. At the end of the day, successful gardening isn't about putting in more hours. It's about choosing the right plants. The right vegetables, forgive your mistakes, survive your busy weeks, and keep feeding you even when life gets hectic. Start small. Pick 1 or 2 crops from this list. Learn what thrives in your space and build confidence with easy wins, because gardening shouldn't feel like another job. Some of the most productive gardens out there are built around plants that basically take care of themselves. And once you see how much food you can grow with so little effort, you'll start looking at every empty pot, raised bed, and sunny corner of your yard a little differently. It's not about being perfect. It's about staying consistent. And sometimes, the easiest vegetables are the ones that turn gardening from a chore into one of the most rewarding habits you'll ever pick up. Thanks for watching Evergreen Root Garden. If this helped, give it a like and subscribe for more.